สวัสดีค่ะ The creative economy sector accounts for about 6% of GDP worldwide. The sector includes film, music, arts, architecture, fashion, handicrafts, and many others that might include creativity not only in the end products, but in the operation process as well. I talked to John Howkins about how to create a creative economy. John Howkins is a widely cited author. He wrote The Creative Economy and Creative Ecologies. John, a lot of countries these days are talking about creative economy, building a creative economy. But what is creativity in the first place?
Creativity, there are many definitions. My definition is it's using ideas to make new ideas. So it's taking an idea from somewhere or someone or someplace, using it, reusing it, giving it one's own personal imprint, and using that to create a new idea.
So all countries have creativity in them somehow?
Everybody. It's individuals. It's individuals. Creativity starts with an individual in a particular place having a particular idea. And yes, everybody is born with that creative imagination.
How do I know if I'm creative?
You were born that way. If you had not been born that way, your parents and the doctors would have been really worried. All it is, it's having an imagination, to dream, to think that things might be different from how they are. And then equally important perhaps is that passion to use that idea, to use that imagination. And children are actually the most creative beings on the planet.
Why?
You were at your peak creativity aged about 3 to 4 years old.
3 to 4?
All we do when we are born is take in sense data, compare it to what we have already observed, and try to make sense of the world. And if we don't like the world, we cry, and if we like the world, we giggle and we laugh. And that's how children behave. That's when they're very young, that's how children behave. Children are very creative. They like to draw, and they're not embarrassed by thinking, is it a good drawing or a bad drawing? They just like to draw. They ask questions. They ask questions adults sometimes find amusing or strange or weird or wonderful. And then as we go to school, we sort of become embarrassed by that, and we lose that confidence in our own creativity.
So how to nurture one's creativity when we grow up?
Well, again, it starts at school. If you have teachers that respond to that childish sense of wonderment of the world and encourage the children to ask questions and treat children seriously. You know, okay, you asked that question, and here's an answer. Let's try and work it out together. Whereas some educational systems don't like children being creative, and they ask them not to be creative. They don't ask them to draw. They say, listen to what I'm saying and repeat it back to me. And if you memorize it correctly and repeat it back to me accurately, then you'll pass the exam and go on to the next level.
So that's not the way to go, right?
No, it's not the way to go. You've got to encourage people to dream. You know, I don't want to exaggerate this, but a little bit of dreaminess, a bit of fantasy is a good thing. To ask questions, to try and, as I say, try and make sense of the world. And if there's a different or a better or more enjoyable, more pleasurable, more imaginative way of doing something, to have the confidence to go with it and try it out. If it doesn't work, pick yourself up, try again.
What is creative economy?
Well, creative economy is taking that ability and using it not just in one's own personal life, if you like, in one's own inner life, but using it in one's business and using it to make products and services, make them different, make them new.
Can you please tell me the process of having ideas, so having something creative in someone's minds and being able to transform it into something substantive?
Yes, it varies. There's a process, or there's a series of sort of parallel processes, if you like, all the way from, let's say, someone writing or acting, when they are literally expressing what's in themselves, to making a change to a product or service to make it more successful in the marketplace. It starts by the same process, by using the imagination to see how things could be done differently. But in certain sectors, when they're embedded in a product or a service, you have to go through groups, you go through committees, you raise money for it, you need technology, you need distributors. And in each sector, that end of the process is different.
When we say creative economy, I tend to think about films, music, Hollywood.
Yeah.
Are these considered
there are 10 or
creative
12,
economies?
15 core sectors
Oh.
that are basically sort of design, media, entertainment. So it's all the ones you mentioned. It's music, it's film, it's television, it's publishing, it's art as well, it's design, it's video games, it's software, digital media. They're all the core creative industries. But if you think about design, or you think about video, clearly they have an impact on today, in an online world, almost everything that we do.
So these are the sectors that governments should encourage?
Yes. Every government wants to encourage them. Most governments find it really hard to do so. Governments don't really understand it.
What do governments not understand?
Well, they don't understand that, and also they don't like it, because creativity is personal and it often fails. I mean, farming doesn't quite fail in the same way. Sometimes we have natural disasters and it is a disaster, everything fails.
Right.
But by and large, the farmers don't fail. They just get on planting the seed, looking after the stock. Manufacturing is sort of doesn't fail, but if I'm coming up with new ideas, if I'm realistic, I know that most of my ideas aren't going to work. I'm going to fail 100% several times a day. You know, the failure rate in the creative economy is extraordinarily high. Governments like to support things where there's a guarantee of success. Then they can go to the media and they can go to the voters and say, look, we're going to put this money into this, and we're going, a year later or 2 years later, we're going to get that result. You can't guarantee that with creativity.
So
it's a very risky operation. It's psychologically risky because I'm putting myself on the line and I'm going to fail a lot of times. And it's financially risky because the investors, it could be just my own money, it could be my company, it could be a bigger operation, are going to lose a lot of money. So it's risky and it's difficult, and governments find that really hard to cope, particularly the guys who are 50, 60 years old who grew up in a manufacturing economy.
But you said it yourself that it's a very high-risk business. So why should governments support high-risk business?
They shouldn't subsidize it, except in one or two cases. There are cases for subsidizing one or two things. But often, they should just back off and say, okay, you know, off you go. Give people freedom to fail. At the same time saying, it's okay if you fail, because you're not using public money. Governments can't run, they can't manage a creative economy in the same way as they can run and manage a manufacturing economy. It's a different kind of business and requires fundamentally different government approach. And as I say, many governments find that really difficult.
So it's a sector that the government should back off somehow, let them
Yes,
grow by themselves.
Yes, the governments can't micromanage creativity. You can't instruct creativity to happen. You can instruct a road to be built, or a hospital, or a school to be built. You can't instruct people to have wonderful ideas. It doesn't work. You can build a factory to replicate manufactured goods, which may be based on a new idea. But you can't, as a government, or indeed any institution, instruct that original idea to happen. You have to create the conditions. Well, what we've been talking a bit about today, you create the networks, the communities. I call it the ecology, the creative ecology. You create, you sustain a creative ecology. And then, having done that in a rather gentle way, you stand back, and if you've got it right, that ecology will allow creative people to flourish.